Let's get some breaking news right now. Looks like a water spout off of Hallandale Beach. Trying to get a look at some live images right now. You see it there ever so faintly in the middle of your screen. Hard to tell what else is going on at the moment, but this is certainly something that we're keeping an eye on right now.
There's a good shot of it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that's much better. Not exactly what you want to see on a Friday, but here we are as we monitor the situation. We were just talking a few minutes ago about how everything seemed rather
We thought everything was
calm.
okay, and then there's this, but this is a water spout,
Yeah.
and it is off of Hollywood Beach, so something to monitor, but let's hope it just kind of stays over the water. And Brandon, as we're looking at this with you, talk to us about this. I mean, these water spouts, they tend to stay out in the water for the most part.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about this at all. This isn't a situation that we should be concerned about, but it's definitely interesting to see, especially because we're looking at it from a vantage point of Sky 10, and we normally don't capture these things because they happen so quick. We don't have a camera this good to actually capture it when it's out over the water. Remember I showed you that picture a little bit ago from Port Miami of a little tiny water spout? It's just the conditions that we have in place today. These usually fizzle out when it gets to the coast. I'm actually curious to see how close to the coast we are. If they ever zoom out, we are able to see that, but it looks like it's pretty decently offshore. If we want to pull a side box up of radar, I can show you some of the showers that we have moving in. These are small showers. Actually, it looks like he's panning over right now. Maybe we can see.
Let's see where the shoreline is. Okay.
It looks like it's a few miles offshore, yeah. So this isn't too concerning. Every once in a while, you can get these to hit the coast, and they usually fizzle out. Can be a little bit dangerous when you have those strong wind gusts and all those beach umbrellas around, but it looks like this is staying far enough offshore, and you can see that heavy rain there on the left side of the screen. So yeah, we'll get a couple of showers like this rolling in, especially Dania Beach. That's actually where these showers are. It's off Hollywood Beach, but that shower off to the left is closer to Dania Beach. You get these quick bursts of heavy rain and an occasional water spout, and this probably won't be the last one we see today either.
Yeah, as we're looking at this image, Brandon, it is such an interesting view because, like you said, it's hard to capture these. They usually fizzle out quickly, and they're not exactly easy to spot. But what's interesting as I'm looking here live from Sky 10, when you look on the left side, you can see where the showers are. You can see the storm right there over the water. But when he panned out to look at the beach, it looks like the beach is okay, and that's sort of what we're dealing with South Florida weather-wise.
Yeah, very isolated small showers today, nothing too widespread. We're not looking at anything severe by the time that these move on shore, but definitely a real interesting view. And I'm surprised it's still actually hanging on a little bit there. It's lasting pretty decent.
I guess the question is here, Brandon, whether or not if someone was at the beach right now, or maybe let's say they wanted to go to the Broadwalk or take a walk right now, you would emphasize this is not something you need to freak out about in any shape, form, or fashion.
No, yeah. I would definitely keep an eye on it just to make sure it doesn't get a little too close to the coastline. You don't want to run towards this thing. It definitely can kick up winds over a small area on the beach, but you can see that spray ring is what we call it there at the surface, and look how rapid those winds are. Those are some pretty strong winds. You can easily get winds down there at the surface like that with this water spout, 50, 60, 70 miles per hour at the bottom in that real small area, kicking up all that sea spray. So a real interesting view. But yeah, if you're down at the beach, I would keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't come close to the coast. But I'm not too concerned about severe weather elsewhere in South Florida today.
And Brandon, are you surprised that, as we've been talking for a few minutes now, that it's still pretty healthy? We're still getting a good view of it. They usually kind of in and out quick.
Yeah, especially on a day like today where you get these small showers like this. We don't have a ton of instability or ingredients there, but offshore we definitely do, offshore of that warmer water that's out there. Normally these are quick. Sometimes you can barely even see them. By the time you get your camera and the app out, they're already gone. But this one seems to be sticking around for a while. This is a more healthy one than that one that I showed you from Port Miami that we had to really, remember we had to zoom in on it to actually see the funnel. This one is a pretty decent shot. It's a very cool looking water spout offshore.
Especially when you get the wide angle view of it too, because when we first took the shot live, it was tightened around the spray ring right at the bottom. So in fact, it was so difficult to make out what we were actually looking at, but this is the best view of everything so far. You see how large it is and the contrast to the left side of your screen, as Janice pointed out earlier, to the right side of your screen, to then when we panned over to the coast, not really noticing anything for someone if you're probably at the beach right now. But the contrast that you pointed out, Brandon, is really important, that 50 to 60 mile per hour winds, that's nothing to scoff at if you were standing directly in front of it or right next to it.
Yeah, in that small area right there. And this is the type of day where we get these needle-like funnels. They're very thin, pencil-like. We're not getting those big-time waterspouts, but when we zoom in like that, it's just incredible to see the sea spray, and you can tell just how fast those winds are rotating over that small area offshore of Hollywood Beach. It looked to be, what, about 2 or 3 miles offshore?
Yeah, that seems about right from at least
bit.
what we've been able to pan out here. But wow, Brandon, you can really see the rotation when we get to the actual water, the end of the spout, seeing that rotation from the water spout. And it does look like it's moving, at least from like this vantage point.
Yeah.
What would that be like, although we don't see anyone out in the water, we don't see any boats out there, but what would this be like if you are out in a boat and you start to spot this? What are sort of those conditions like if you are in fact near this on the water? Yeah,
we have seen videos of boats out around waterspouts very similar to this, and people want to kind of get close to it and check it out a little bit. But if this hits your boat, you don't want, the last thing you want is this the capsize. You know, a 50, 60 mile per hour wind local right at your boat could easily overturn it. So yeah, steer clear and just keep an eye out for it as it gets a little bit closer to the coast. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's moving at all. If we can do a double box with graphics, I can show you the radar that's going on, because we are seeing a slight uptick in some of the showers. This is some heavy rain that's falling offshore too. We don't want that moving into those same areas that had all that heavy rain there in Dania Beach. I know we picked up about a good inch and a half of rain from this train of showers in between about Hollywood and Fort Lauderdale, and they just keep regenerating over the same areas. I'm just surprised this thing is still going. It's resilient.
It's been probably about what 3-5 minutes now that it's still kind of active.
And while we wait for the chance to maybe see the radar that you're pointing out,
producers could get that radar up, that'd be helpful.
Brandon, I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier a couple times now. In fact, that this doesn't tend to last very long. What's sort of the high-end projection on how long these typically sort of sit out there on the water?
The ones we have seen today have been very quick, but this one looks a little bit more intense than the ones that we've seen in pictures so far today. So this could easily last, 10, 15, 20 minutes or so before it fizzles out. And I'm actually looking on radar. This thing is so small and so thin, I can barely see any rotation there on radar with any of these showers. So that's why the National Weather Service may not even know this is there unless I'm sure they're watching our feed, but you can't see this thing on radar because it's so small. So let me zoom in here, and you can see a couple of those showers moving in between Hollywood and Fort Lauderdale, going right on top of Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood Airport. Notice you're not seeing those big, intense reds. We went through last week and we saw some of these funnel clouds move through. That's a very different environment. You got strong supercell thunderstorms moving through this area. Notice on radar, no lightning strikes popping up. These are just some generic downpours, but you get the ingredients to come together just right. Offshore, over that warm water, you get that little bit of spin. You don't have friction of trees or anything. It's just that flat water. You can easily get those water spouts to develop, and it makes for an incredible sight if you're down there seeing something like this in person.
And Brandon, although it does seem to still be pretty far offshore, we're still monitoring it because, again, we're a bit surprised that it's lasting this long. But what would sort of be the ingredients that would allow this water spout to move toward the shore?
Well, we have a little bit of wind shear in place. It goes along with the winds kind of upstairs. Here along the Florida coastline in this tropical air mass and all this moisture, we see hundreds of these water spouts throughout the year. They come in different shapes and sizes. A lot of them come and go, and people don't even know they're there. But in a case like today, this is a pretty decent one that is getting a little close to the coastline. You see the radar there. These storms moving kind of from east to west, so they are getting a little bit closer to the coast. We could see these get pretty close to the coast, and it's not unheard of occasionally for some of these water spouts to briefly move on shore. Once it hits the sand, that would actually be considered a tornado and can whip around those beach umbrellas. And we know how populated a Hollywood Beach can get this time of the year. And let's go back to that full screen, because it looks like we're cutting off that funnel. It should be on the right side of the screen. That rain there in the background.
It looks like it's moving, Brandon. I mean, it's a little hard to tell, but it does seem to get closer and closer to the shore now that we're getting this vantage point.
And we don't know whether that's just the shift in perspective from Sky 10 versus sort of our eyes maybe deceiving us in terms of its curvature or anything else. I know you said maybe it's not getting closer, but is it moving at all here?
It's definitely looks like it's about within a mile, I'd say, of the coastline now. The shower activity is moving towards the coastline, so this waterspout would be moving along with it. And usually these things fizzle out when it gets to the coast, but I haven't seen much change in the structure of this since we came on with it. Yeah,
it's holding on strong, Brandon, and I have to say that one thing I notice as I'm looking at the shoreline here. Again, this is just off of Hollywood Beach. I see plenty, at least even from this vantage point from Sky 10, I see lots of people on the beach. I could see some of the beach umbrellas, some of the beach chairs, the towels. Like, it's very evident to see that. So there are people on the beach right now, no doubt with their cell phones out, probably trying to get images of this, which is quite a sight to see. It's moving. It's definitely moving toward the shore. So I do hope those people there know you might want to get indoors now.
Yeah, don't stretch your time out there for too long if you can. But this is also a worthy opportunity to kind of remind people as we now zoom in.
Looks like they're getting away.
There's some
there's
moving
people
off
leaving.
to the Broadwalk.
Yeah. They're doing exactly what they should do. They've been watching this thing. They see it getting closer. And in this case, if it's coming right at you, it looks like it's not moving because it's moving in your
look
direction.
at this, Brandon.
There you go.
And it's getting close. Yeah, this one looks like it's going to move on shore.
It's going to make it on shore. I really, in the next few seconds here, let's watch
You
this.
mentioned also this is a tornado once it makes landfall here, touches the sand, correct?
Yeah, once this hits the sand, this would be a brief tornado. I'm curious. Look at the umbrellas already rolling down the beach. You see that?
Yeah, we see it. You said, whoa, look at that, just lifting it right up. So you said about 50-mile-per-hour winds we could be expecting from something like this?
You could easily see 50, 60, even higher, depending on the strength of it. That's right on top of the Broadwalk there.
It looks like someone almost just fell on the right side of your screen there.
Chairs
and now
getting whipped around.
Chairs.
It looks like, okay, it might be done from what we saw.
Well,
it might have finished.
This is a good moment to ask whether, like, what are the dynamics of a waterspout now that it is technically a tornado in the sense that it made contact with the sand, everything else. How long does it take to sort of dissipate from here on out?
Sometimes they can last a while. In this case, like I told you, it's not going to last long, and you can see it's already fizzled out. It hits the land, it's hitting these buildings, the winds get disrupted because there's more friction, and it already fizzled out. The funnel may still be above there, up by the clouds, but I don't see any circulation at the surface. That looks like Margaritaville. That's on the bottom, that big white building there.
It does look like
So this is just north of Margaritaville, right in the middle of the Broadwalk.
Right in that busy Broadwalk we were talking about. And Brandon, what an example of how quickly the weather can change. We first spotted this several miles offshore. We weren't even sure if it was going to make it to shore because, like you said, we rarely see that. But it took about, what, 10 minutes for it to get to land. So what a sight to see that we were able to capture this from Sky 10. We have never been able to capture an actual waterspout making landfall in that way and see what it can do, even in those brief seconds, what it can do.
Yeah, you saw it didn't take long, and I think that's the biggest danger about these waterspouts. It's not so far inland near the buildings. It's right there on the beach with all those umbrellas. Imagine that big umbrella stick blowing around when you're sitting there on the beach. And it looked like most people had cleared out and trying to get a closer look.
Yeah,
like
a few on the right side of your screen are now making their way back out to the beach, it looks like there, and perhaps that one at the top, right where we see the truck, might have been the person a couple minutes ago that we saw fall down when it initially made landfall there. So hopefully that person is doing okay, but it looks like just based on general behavior, everyone seems to be back to quote-unquote normal.
Right.